There are still billions of dollars available for businesses through the Employee Retention Credit Federal Tax Credit Program. Stenson Tamadon has helped companies with less than 500 employees retrieve over $3.4 billion in tax credits through employee retention credits. Call Stenson Tamadon today at 866-934-8461 today to start your application. That's 866-934-8461 to apply. Call now.
Welcome to the AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight interview series. Today, my guest is Eric Brown, co-founder of InSearchX, AskOtto. Welcome.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure being here.
Thanks. Glad to have you. Well, Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself, your history in the car business, what you're doing these days. Catch us up on what's going on in your life.
Well, let's see. I have a new grandchild, so I'm very excited about that.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you very much. I just came from there, so that was very exciting. That's probably the most exciting thing in my life right now. But
cool.
No, I've been in the auto industry now over 10 years, almost 15 years, I guess. And it started with the founding of a company called Dadium, which was a behavioral analytics company that IHS, many folks here would know it as Polk, acquired several years ago. So that's sort of how I got into automotive, was understanding consumer behavior and scoring consumer behavior for intent and vehicle consideration. And then spent some time with a company called LotLinks, as president of that company. They had actually been a customer of Dadium, et cetera. And then from there, I launched the company that we have today around the concept of perpetual search, which really that whole concept was born out of the data we saw in consumer behavior and said, gee, how can we provide a better experience for the consumer? And so here we are.
Cool. Eric, tell us how your AskOtto platform helps dealers and delivers value.
Yeah. So the simplest answer to that, of course, is that we are dramatically increasing the level of consumer engagement and conversion, not only on our websites, but throughout sort of the ecosystem of car shopping by enabling consumers to access that consumer's inventory, to dialogue with that consumer about that, dialogue with the dealership about that inventory without having to navigate the internet. So we engage the consumer in a variety of places. They might be buying auto parts and they scan a QR code and they've activated a sales funnel essentially to the local dealer, or they park a car and we pick up the license plate and we see that's a Honda Accord, and I won't go through all the details, but there's a way then we convert them into activating a search for their next Honda Accord, or maybe getting information about service or warranties, et cetera, refinancing their Honda Accord, et cetera, or maybe making that vehicle available to the dealership for their inventory. So there's a whole variety of mechanisms, but the underlying principle is, how do we create the path of least resistance for the consumer either to buy a car or sell a car, and remove all the friction that navigation creates when we ask a consumer to bounce around the internet. They typically bounce out of the path of purchase. Yeah.
Eric, where did the concept of perpetual search come from?
Right. Well, as I mentioned a minute ago, I used to have a company called Dadium, and we were tracking consumer behavior. And what I saw in that behavior was a lot of breakage. Consumers, in fact, we see it even today, 50% of clicks coming off of ads bounce, right? They never make their intended destination. We see consumers visit websites and sometimes they figured out how to do the inventory search, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes when they did the inventory search, or often when they did the inventory search, they wouldn't even scroll the results page, so the perfect car for them, they never saw it. And really, all of that is because we're still operating under this premise that websites are hosted on their individual private servers like they were in the late 90s when the internet started. But what's happened, of course, is all of this content, every website you see today, even this show, is going to be hosted in the cloud. And so that means I don't need to be clicking on links to go from one website to the other. I can literally send a signal to the cloud, and certainly command the cloud to produce for me the content I want. And so that's what perpetual search does. It says to the cloud, hey, I'm looking for a Honda Accord 2015. Here's what I want to spend. Let me know when that content exists in that massive database. And then let me know via my notifications. And then when I see that information come into me, so when you deliver that information and that content to me, I'll respond to it and I can ask questions about that car via my same device. I can activate my notifications or this open dialogue channel back to whoever provided that content to me and ask questions about it. And by the way, as a consumer, I can do that without any personal identifiable information. So I'm going to do that at a rate 63,000 times greater than I would normally. That's actually the stat.
Well, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a 63% conversion rate versus 1%.
Wow.
Because the consumer's in control and they've opened the channel. They have control of that channel. And so the interesting thing about it's a very simple premise, right? It's just a path of least resistance. And how we're doing that is we're saying we're creating the path of least resistance for the consumer by saying to the consumer, you don't have to navigate to the website to get to this inventory, right? Or if by chance you did navigate and you found that inventory on my website, or maybe you did a search on my website, you don't have to come back over and over again. You can just activate a search and I'll let you know as the inventory evolves or as the car you have interest in price change, or I have a special offer for you, right? Because this is now a one-to-one conversation with every consumer that visits your website. And so you're no longer sort of constrained by having to have the lowest common denominator for the masses, right? You can engage each consumer individually.
Wow. So what you're saying is if I'm looking for, a Honda Accord, somewhere between 2005 and 2015 for X amount of dollars for my daughter or my son,
right?
I can search for it once. You don't have it, but the day you do get it, I get a notification on my phone that says, that car is now available.
Correct. And then we have other integrations, coming where I really like that car, but do I qualify? Boom, push a button, right? But I never had to visit the website. And as a dealer, I didn't have to get your attention. I didn't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars trying to get, did I have the right keyword? Did I use the right data? Did I use the right pixel tracking? Did I use the right creative? You didn't have to do any of that because the consumer voluntarily raised their hand and said, please let me know when you have this car. And during an inventory shortage, that's particularly important in this time because often you don't have the car. Well, what happens when you don't have the car? The consumer is gone. They literally left. Well, what if you could tether that consumer to your website long after they left and continue to communicate with them either your inventory availability or maybe service offers or a cash offer on the trade information they submitted, et cetera.
Oh, so you can also offer a cash offer on the vehicle that they currently have to try to acquire more inventory.
Correct.
Which everybody needs right now.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Wow.
Or maybe you just want to offer them a service coupon.
Yeah.
To bring that car in. Right.
Over the last couple of years, we were all hiding in our basements, sitting in our living rooms, scrolling through Amazon, buying a bunch of stuff that we maybe even needed it. Most of it we didn't. And it was easy. It was click to buy. It showed up the next day. And if we didn't like it, we could return it for free. Now, all of retail has followed that. Macy's does it now. Walmart does it now. Why aren't car dealerships doing it now? Did we get left in the dust? What do we need to do to exceed our customers' expectations on what an online buying purchase should be like?
Yeah, so what's interesting, there's a couple components to that question. So first off, I owe you some money right now because you really set me up for this answer. Thank you. But we actually use the premise a lot of Amazon versus Walmart when we're talking about what we do from a perpetual search standpoint. And that is digital marketing is largely like what we know Walmart traditionally to be. I'm going to run ads. I'm going to ask you to navigate to my store. Right? And to drive to the store, which is navigating to on my online store, is what we ask with digital marketing. Hey, I'm going to throw billboards up all over the internet. Please navigate to my online store. And then when you get to the store, I'd like you to do a search of that store, right? And I just suffered this yesterday. I was in Nashville and I went to a grocery store. Never been there before. I spent half my time trying to figure out what was in what aisle and trying to find the product. Same thing's happening on our website. So our premise, as I was talking about earlier, is to invert that and follow the Amazon model. Say, just tell me what you want. I'll put it on your front porch, right? A lot less friction there for the consumer, and it's all about the path of least resistance. So why has Walmart gotten aggressive in online and Macy's and all those you mentioned? Because it's the path of least resistance for the consumer. It's what the consumer wants. And so we see ourselves as the first step in digital retailing is because none of the other stuff that a lot of folks focus on, financing, payment, all those things, digital signatures, none of that happens till the consumer discovers the car they want to buy.
Yeah. Right?
And so unless you start first with enabling the consumer to discover inventory on their terms, none of the rest of that happens. And you can actually see that in the adoption rates in digital retailing. So has the automotive industry been left behind? Not yet. Right? And I think, there's always going to be a place probably for that showroom and for some of that transaction, but certainly in empowering the consumer to search my inventory no matter where they are on the internet or offline or online, can easily be done today. And I think that's the first step to the next step, right? I'm more likely to trust you with your online transaction as a consumer if you help me discover the vehicle in the first place.
You know, you mentioned to me when we were talking about scheduling this interview that you had been selected by the Detroit Auto Show for the innovation area, and I'm curious. You haven't even shared with me yet. You know, what's going on with that?
Well, we're still getting a lot of the details ourselves, but we'll be exhibiting there with a number of companies that were selected. I understand from thousands of applications that the Detroit Auto Show believes are the innovators in the space, and so there's everybody. It's pretty diverse. There's people about battery technology. There's people about chargers. There's a lot about EVs. We'll have a focus on EVs there ourselves with our EV product, and we can talk more about that in a minute. But and so we're told there's going to be a lot of investment companies, a lot of the OEMs will be there, large dealer groups, et cetera. So we're excited to share how we're innovating the space by removing navigation from product discovery, by enabling dialogue with local dealerships without PII. And there's a lot of privacy laws around that too. That makes that very important these days. Just sort of in general too, how we're built out a new distribution channel for for inventory. So all of our parking lot integration, I think, was a great interest to them. What we're doing there is we'll see what car you parked based on your license plate, and then we take the consumer through a vehicle experience survey that's actually sponsored by a number of manufacturers, and then based on that, then the dealer can interact with that person, whether it's offering them service, extended warranty, to buy the car they just parked, et cetera. And so what's cool about that, of course, is everybody parks a car. And so with simple integrations, we bring millions of people into either the sales funnel or the inventory funnel or the service funnel for local dealerships.
My next question was going to be on EVs, and we'll get back to that. We'll get back to that. I do want to ask, with the parking opportunity for a car dealer. I mean, so what you're saying is on, 10 Sundays a year at Paul Brown Stadium, there's 35,000 cars parked there.
Right.
All 35,000 of those people, if they're using an app to park their vehicle, or at an airport, or on a city street, or at a concert venue, all of those people now can be driven into a funnel that puts them either as a sales or a service opportunity for a car dealer. Is that accurate?
Correct, as well as buy that vehicle for inventory. Yep. Because the license plate tells us everything. We know where you parked the car. You're digitally engaged with the digital receipt, or maybe it's a printed receipt with a QR code. We have various gamification techniques we can use to get you to scan that QR code, or to, obviously, when the digital receipt comes in, the offer can come right beside that digital receipt. So the call to action.
So it could be like a coupon for $50 off a service, or a discount oil change, or now are those offers vehicle specific?
Yeah, yes, they can be.
They can be?
They don't have to be, but yes, certainly they can be, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Our intent would be that, yeah.
Cool. All right, well, we're going to circle back to the EV question.
Okay.
No interview in 2022 would be complete without talking about EVs.
Yeah.
EVs are definitely the buzz, and in fact, we have a new brand at Babcock's called the Buzz. It's our EV brand. Tell me how you feel EVs are going to change our industry, what it means to you and your business. What's your perspective?
So right now it's creating a lot of opportunity for us. You might have seen the release where Toyota has licensed our AskOtto platform, specifically the quiz, not only our quiz for ICE vehicles, but also for EV. And just some research that we have from the Vehicle Experience Survey, thanks to our partner called Strategic Vision, 56% of consumers are either actively shopping for an EV or are interested in learning more about them.
Wow.
Right? The challenge, of course, is they don't know a lot about them organically. And you always hear that. I have a friend who bought an EV, had a charger in their condo building, thought, oh, this is going to be fine, until they found out it was a first-generation charger, and it'd take 12 hours to charge it. And oh, by the way, there's only 3 of them, and then there's 400 people in the building and 20 EVs. And so they're now having to go outside and pay, for a commercial charger because they can't get to the one in the building at least long enough to keep the car charged. So there's all those sort of educational elements that consumers just don't understand. And so that's what we're doing with the quiz, is helping the consumer through 5 quick questions and in dialogue with AskOtto, discover which EVs fit them, and then that we actually will produce a sizzle reel essentially, and then an educational component to that as well. How do you charge this car? Where do you charge it? All those kinds of things. And so the impact of EVs is we've got to get back. I don't know if we have to get, but we have to get really good at starting at zero with the consumer, because the consumer doesn't have a lot of knowledge. Somebody's bought a Honda Accord, 4 times. That's a different sales conversation. It's a different process. But when they're coming in to buy an EV or minimally just research it, that requires a level of expertise. It's probably not quite yet there in the showroom. So I think that's something at the local dealership level we have to really think through, that the consumer isn't coming at this with the same confidence and assurity, and therefore that's going to impact the sales cycle of the vehicle. Now, we can get into all the operational issues with EVs, the charging them, the less service, less moving parts, all those things, and all the government incentives. We just had the law passed. And all that, of course, is just noise, right? I'm not sure, I want to mitigate it as only noise, but it's a lot of noise, and the consumer's trying to, wade through all of that. So I think, understanding that perspective of the consumer is, I'm interested. I'm being told it's a better idea. I don't know if it is or not, and people just don't like to do things they're not, if there's uncertainty, it's going to mitigate success. So we've got to deal with that uncertainty first. And that's what we're trying to do with the EV quiz and with our licensing agreements with Toyota, et cetera.
You mentioned the education after the survey on EVs, and I think that's super important. I mean, even myself in my own life, my wife was looking at getting an EV. And, picking out the car was not that big of a deal. Figuring out the incentives, not that big of a deal. The tax situation, not that big of a deal. My house was built in 1910. I have a detached garage, and there's concrete in between the garage and the house. And so running 212 out there was going to be a major challenge. So it wasn't actually finding, the biggest challenge for me was figuring out, is it worth it, and how do I do it?
Right.
And so I think education is absolutely something that we need big time, with EVs.
Yeah, you actually raise a pretty good point. I mean, of all the cars I've ever bought, all the ICE vehicles I've ever bought, no one asked me to buy a gas station too, right? And with the EV, I not only have to figure out the car, but to your point, I have to figure out how I'm going to charge it, where am I going to charge it, and you never buy a ICE vehicle and think, gee, I wonder where the next gas station is, right?
Yeah.
So that level of complexity is there, and so certainly the buzz, and we see this in the market research data that we work with, that there's a lot of interest. Like I said, over half of the consumers are very interested in EVs. But after the buzz, right, there's not much substance after that yet in the marketplace. And so we've got to put some food on that plate, before menu looks very interesting, but we got to actually put some food on the plate so that consumers, will have confidence in paying for that check.
Yep.
Yeah. Excuse the analogy.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do with the 0 to 60 in a few seconds, but
that's
only if the car's charged, right?
So some other interesting things in the data too. So this all comes out of our vehicle experience survey that we do in partnership with Strategic Vision, and it's part of our platform now. But is consumers, when they drive the EV, when they test drive one, and this is actually something we're working on with manufacturers, is some gamification around test driving an EV, but the likelihood of purchasing the vehicle dramatically increases. Like it's like if you can get them into an EV, they're like, this driving experience is amazing, right? So the meat on the bone or the food on the plate is there from an experience standpoint, right? The restaurant looks great, it feels great, the waiter was nice, all those things essentially. But then what the other interesting things in the data too is that about 35% of the people who buy an EV, the next car, they replace it with a gasoline-powered engine.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And so with hybrids, it's a little less, but it's really interesting to see that happen. And I think it's because, I was attracted to the experience, but I didn't realize what that experience was going to cost me.
Well, and those were earlier generation EVs probably too.
Correct.
Now the range issues are getting better. The charging availability is getting better, and the speed with which it charges is absolutely getting better. So, maybe that number will shrink as technology catches up.
And then you have states like California won't let you go back to the gas engine, right? Was it 2035, right? So, or they're trying that. So yeah, I definitely those things are going to evolve. And it's probably like most, adoption curves, it's 2 steps forward, 1 back, 2 steps forward, 1 back. And then, but the overall trend line is in that direction.
Digital retailing is a hot topic. You
Yes.
can't pick up a copy of AutoSuccess without an article about digital retailing. You can't go to our website without seeing something about digital retailing. Everybody's talking about digital retailing on the dealer side, but did consumers get the message?
So digital retailing overall, yes. I mean, look at the growth of Amazon, and as we talked about earlier, Walmart, their shift, et cetera. Consumers, to me, this is the guiding principle of all adoption, from the day man discovered fire, right? We are always looking for the path of least resistance. Yep. It's really that simple. How do I remove friction from my life? I've got a phone in my pocket. It wasn't like I didn't have one on the wall, right? We even sell cars today because there's less friction in owning a car than a horse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it delivers more convenience for me, et cetera, right? And so that's the case, right? So I think that's just true. That's a principle that's embedded in all of us, is I'm looking for the path of least resistance to my own happiness. Yep. The question is, does digital retailing accomplish that? Is it more or less friction? And for many consumers, and I think we see this in the adoption rates, it's actually more friction. Do I really want to learn this software? Do I really want to jump through these hoops when I could just wait till I get to the dealership and let the guy there or the woman there do it for me, right? Because in my own mind, I'm not buying a car every day like I use my calendar software or all other types of software, right? I'm not buying a car at the rate I order from Amazon.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't need to adopt or learn or train myself on how to use this software. So that's the resistance, right? Is it less or more friction? For some people, it may be less friction. I'm not sure it's the majority yet when it comes to purchasing a car, just because there is so much complexity in that, mainly because of regulations and all the variabilities in buying a vehicle from state to state, city to city, et cetera, manufacturer to manufacturer, but also because I just don't do it often enough that I'm willing to invest the time today to use this software. Now, in my own mind, I'm thinking, I'm never going to use it again. Yeah. Right? Or it's software I'm learning for this dealership, but I don't know if I'm going to buy a car from this dealership again. I might be, next time I buy a car, 5 years from now, I may not even live here anymore, and that's going to be somebody else's software. So, is that worth the effort when I could just let them do the paperwork for me? That's my sense right now. Now, are there ways around there, ways to resolve that? Yes. I'm not sure we're there yet.
Okay. And I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier. You had mentioned that when somebody pulls into the parking lot and the license, through the license plate, we're able to engage them with an app as they're paying for their parking. And you had mentioned some different the dealership reaching out. But I know from our previous conversations that it's more than just the dealership. That it can be other opportunities for that consumer and other opportunities for other products. Just share with us a little bit about that vision that you have.
Yeah. So the consumer, and this is about, again, reducing friction, right? I didn't have to enter my license plate. I entered at the park, and as a result of that, I got additional benefits like, there's a recall. I got a safety notice on this vehicle, right? I got a credit score or evaluation on the vehicle instantly, and I didn't have to go find a VIN or do anything. I parked my car and I got that information, right? So it's removing, again, friction to that engagement. And then because we know the vehicle, I can get additional offers. So right there is a button that says, you have cash offers on your car, or you have an insurance quote for your car. And now as a consumer, I can push that button and see a list of insurance quotes for my car, or I can push that button to see cash offers for my car, or I can push that button to see warranty offers on my car or service offers, et cetera. All of them specifically aligned to me, all of them curated from the cloud via APIs for me with one tap of the button. I command cash offers on my car, and I didn't do anything but push a button. Yeah. And it's that, again, that's about removing friction. Okay, we've already captured the car you're in, the cameras picked it up, or you entered the license plate because you needed to pay for your parking. Boom, we've activated that engagement. And then actually what we're rolling out right now with them is the vehicle experience survey where, take a 2-minute survey about your car, and you are in it to win a this week's $200 gas card. And that's actually being sponsored by the manufacturers through the research company. And so, we're engaging other people to help, with that project as well.
So this year, NADA is returning to Dallas.
Yes.
Do you think that this is a good idea? Do you think that it'll be well attended by dealers? What are your thoughts on that?
So first off, isn't everybody going to Dallas these days? I think so. I mean, it's the center of the country. So, we've been talking about the path of least resistance. Well, that's what NADA is up to, is right. Where do we find the path of least resistance? Is it flying? I live in South Florida. Is it flying all the way to San Francisco? Or is it going to Dallas, the center of the country, right? Friction, what's it cost me to have a conference in San Francisco versus Dallas, right? Friction for me as an attendee, what's it cost me to fly there and the cost of my hotel rooms in Dallas versus, so, to me, I'm a little myopic about this topic, but that's what we're all looking at. Every organization, every business, how do I remove friction? How do I create the path of least resistance? And that's all that Dallas is about. So if I were a betting man, I would bet, yes, more people are going to be in Dallas just because there's less resistance in terms of time, energy, and cost to get there.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I mean, San Francisco definitely was not frictionless. If you're going to go
scary
visit
standing
Boots.
on a street corner, actually. Yeah.
Oh,
I got lost one time going back to the hotel, and it was pretty scary.
Market Street used to be safe, and it's not now.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
talk about friction.
Yeah, talk about friction. Yeah, and then if you have an appointment in one hall, and then you got to go down the street and wait at the crosswalk, and it friction. Yeah. It made it really difficult. So I'm looking forward to Dallas, and
I am too.
And New Orleans is always one of my favorites because it's all compact. Your hotel is near the convention center.
Right.
And then all of the parties are on the same street.
Wait a minute, Brian, are you talking about the path of least resistance to the convention hall from your hotel?
Yeah.
Wow, funny how that works.
Yeah. Well, and in my business, I might have to go to 3 or 4 parties in the same night to go see clients. And
I said 3 or 4 parties?
Yeah, 3 or 4 parties.
Wow.
And so if
you must be younger than
town,
I am.
Yeah. Well, I go early and I get out early.
Okay, all right.
You go in, shake hands, and go home.
You're a better man than I.
Yeah. Well, it's been a great interview, Eric. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience, before we say goodbye?
No, we're very excited about the work we're doing. We're just solely focused on how do we remove friction for the consumer? Where are the points of engagement where we can essentially activate a search for the consumer without them having to navigate the internet, because navigation is friction. And so we're excited about the work. We're excited to find partners. And that's really, I should say, our business model is really to be the infrastructure, be the digital platform, if you will, that anyone in the space can license to optimize the consumer experience for either their product, their service to dealers, as a dealership itself, as a manufacturer, like we mentioned with Toyota, or insurance companies. We really, we're here to be that platform to facilitate that experience for the consumer with their products or services.
Thank you for joining us for this AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. Today's guest was Eric Brown from InSearchX AskOtto. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. We hope to see you again soon.